Hello, friends. Welcome to the show. This episode was brought to you by ecofloatinghome.com. We personally live, work, and broadcast from our floating studio here in Corona, Palawan. Our studio was built with the best attributes of floating yachts, floating homes, and waterfront villas. It also has the benefit of being self-sufficient, sustainable, and economically friendly. It's 100% carbon neutral. Live in comfort and luxury. Enjoy the life between sea and sky. Check it out at ecofloatinghome.com. Looking for quality outdoor gear? It's ROX, the biggest outdoor superstore in Southeast Asia. Your most trusted outdoor brand in one store. Your source for high quality products and outdoor information. Go check it out. It's ROX.
Radio check, radio check, radio check. This is the Explorer's Pod over.
4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, man, we're rolling. You know, we're on a prepaid plan here. And this morning, it's just after midnight here. And we couldn't get the Wi-Fi to load. And we're stressing because we're like, man, this show's going to go 5 minutes. It's going to shut down. But anyway, problem solved. We've got it sorted out.
All right.
So all's good.
Now I can focus.
Well done.
Perfect timing. Okay.
Well done.
It's like a race.
I love it. I love it.
Every second is an adventure.
100%.
Okay.
Here we go. We're rolling. Action. Let's do it.
All right, George. Welcome. It's really nice to meet you, and thank you for gracing our show. We're very excited to have you, and when you said yes, Todd and I was like, excellent, really awesome people like George in our show. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And for our audience, George, give us a little bit of a background about yourself.
Well, Todd and Janet, firstly, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. I even put on a special jumper to celebrate the occasion. It's 4 o'clock here in the UK, and it's just past midnight with you guys over there in the Philippines. So I thought if I wore a jazzy jumper, at least you might stay awake watching or looking at my rather peculiar jumper, which in itself I bought whilst on an adventure, on an expedition or in some part of the world. But as a way of a short introduction to myself, my name is George Bullard. I'm a world record-breaking explorer. I've spent the last 14 years really doing expeditions all over the globe. And they started when I was very young. We swam across the English Channel, and then we swam around Barbados, around New York, along Lake Zurich, and then up to the Arctic. And it's sort of gone all over the shop and got very exciting and very, some of them very risky, but also some of them very, very dangerous. And my key mission in life now is to rewild humans. I believe strongly that every single one of us have become detached in some way from our planet. And I think that through the outdoors, we can change lives. Every single one of us can be changed by spending a little more time outdoors. So that's me. That's my mission, and I'm delighted to be here with both of you today. So thank you for asking me.
Yeah, we're delighted to be here as well. And I don't know if we need to be rewilded much more. We could get in trouble.
Yeah.
But, you know, we'll give it a go.
So, George, where did it all start? Looking back, what first got you in the outdoors, and how did it culminate into your story today?
That's a great question. So I think I can attribute the initial part of me being me to certainly my parents. I think there is a degree of nature versus nurture. I think there's a little balance there. And my parents certainly brought me up with a toolbox of always saying yes. Certainly they gave me this armory of skills, of, I don't know, whatever it is, you know, not just a physical armory, but, you know, a set of skills, a set of beliefs, that led me to always, pretty much always, say yes. apart from a few occasions, of course. And so they certainly brought me up under that auspice, under that pretense. And of course, that is only half of the story, because the other half then is what sort of opportunities do you say yes to, and why do you say yes to them? The sort of nurture side. And I was extremely lucky to get some opportunities, right, to do something. And I think those opportunities started with, hey, mate, do you want to come play football today? And I'm like, yes. You know, some people might say, no, I think I'd rather watch TV. And I was always like, yeah, let's do it. And then after that, after playing football, someone was like, do you want to come and, I don't know, let's go? Yes, let's do it. And then I was, you know, confronted with opportunities that were a bit more risky, were a bit more dangerous. And I kind of, armed with my toolbox and my always saying yes attitude to life, I then was like trundling off, gonna go and swim across the channel. More people have climbed Mount Everest than have swum across the English Channel. So it's a pretty, you know, it's a significant feat, 22 miles of swimming. It's freezing. It's obviously the North Sea. It's not particularly pleasant. And presents a real barrier. Yeah, so that's kind of where it all started. And then, as I said, every year from then, it just kind of got more and more exciting and more sporty.
Wow, it's pretty incredible. We've got a lot to talk about, a lot of questions today. You have such a long story and quite diverse. So I really want to start with the English Channel. It's quite impressive that you started at such a young age, at quite a huge accomplishment. And before we get started, I want to play a quick clip. H, can you play clip 1, please?
American Sarah Thomas just swam the English Channel 4 times, non-stop. Just look at her record-breaking route. From England to France, back to England, then back to France, and finally back to England non-stop. She spent 54 hours in the water before coming ashore exhausted but triumphant.
Wow. So it all started, Captain Webb in 1875 crosses the channel, 22 miles. That was one of my questions, but you answered it right off the bat. I can't believe it's actually that far. And now you get, you know, I think that was a year ago or so, Sarah Thomas, 4 freaking times, man. Anyway, you were 14 years old, though. It come a long way since 1875.
Man, Sarah Thomas, I mean, what a hero. I was like following her every step of every stroke of the way, you know.
Yeah.
And it was truly phenomenal. I'm not sure what possessed her to get back in when she reached France, let alone to do that twice more.
Yeah, and you know, I don't know if you saw her when she got out of the water, and I'm sure even after one time across the channel, you're pretty much done. Hard to talk, but she was definitely haggard. She was swollen, her tongue was swollen, her throat hurt, she could hardly talk. But pretty impressive. And so what is she doing? She's doing nearly 90 some miles or something, right?
I mean, phenomenal.
Incredible story. But I want to congratulate you for that feat and say, wow, what a great accomplishment to start out at such a young age. Good on you, buddy.
Cheers, dude.
Oh, here we go. So you got a lot of big swims. You started pretty early. Tell us about the first big swim across the channel. How did it get started? And was it a defining moment for you? I'm guessing that when you do something this grandiose at that age, that sort of sets the stage for the rest of your life. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's so strange. And I think we all get it, you know, when you've been out on an adventure and you come back and no one can quite relate to it. No one can quite understand why, you know, what you've been doing. And actually no one will ever really understand just how tough it was, what you went through. And, you know, I mean, just straight off the bat here, like I did it at 14 and I was part of a team, you know, so we were inspired by our swimming teacher at school who was like, you're a great team, you're great kids, and I think you've got it in you to swim across the channel. Do you want to do it? And, you know, we were 14, 15 at the time. And we were just like, yeah, let's give it a shot. So every morning before school at 5:45 in the morning, we were in the pool training, and then we go back to the pool at 6 p.m. after class and whatever. And I permanently smelled of chlorine, which is largely quite unpleasant. But I think after having done it, again, that my toolbox, which I sort of speak about quite a lot, exploded with confidence and like, what's next? Give it to me. Show me the next challenge. And I think all of these things, and the reason why I keep on going back to do more is I just keep on finding out more about myself. And obviously it's visiting some beautiful parts of the planet, but I keep on like understanding like truly what the human body is capable of doing and putting itself through in loads of different environments. And it's pretty remarkable when you speak about Sarah Thomas and like her swelling tongue. It's absolutely true. Humans are not designed to live in salt water.
Right.
Period.
Right.
And the fact that she covered 90 miles and was still able to walk out of the sea was pretty remarkable, because your sense of balance is completely gone. Even during our training sessions in Dover Harbour, we wouldn't be able to walk. We'd like get out, and we were like kids. I was skin and bone. I was cold, and I'd like crawl up the beach trying to get to my sleeping bag to get myself in it. So all of these things, there's some of them aren't as successful as others, and I just constantly find it fascinating, and why others might say no, but also the experiences that you have when you're there. I think these are just truly extraordinary opportunities, and I'm very grateful to have ever had them.
Yeah,
wow.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool to have a teacher like that as well. Pretty outgoing, and to have parents who actually sign you off on that big adventure is pretty special as well.
Wow.
Either that, or they just couldn't wait to get rid of me. Take him.
Yeah.
Swim the English
Good luck,
Channel.
son.
George, later you went on to swimming and circumnavigate Barbados and New York's Manhattan Island, and later on swim the length of Lake Zurich. Out of those, which is the hardest and which one was the most memorable, and why?
That's a great question, Janet. I think the hardest for sure was Barbados.
Okay.
Mainly because it was the longest, but also you're swimming in the Atlantic Ocean, and it's a beast. It's an absolute beast. We were wearing like full stinger suits, obviously because there are Portuguese men of war, big jellyfish there, and it's sort of got huge tentacles that sit in the water, and then just the sheer distance of it. Now, I don't know what you've read or how much research you've done, but that particular journey wasn't like an outright success. We set out to swim around the island of Barbados. That was our mission. But we were checking the weather forecast, and we swam around the south eastern side of the island, which you may be familiar with Barbados, but it's quite rough, not so rough. It's like a little bit rough. But then as soon as you get onto the Atlantic side of the island, which is basically the eastern side, it really gets pretty rough. And on that peninsula is a reef where a bigger boat can't come inside of because it's too shallow. But it's quite significant in terms of being, if we had to swim around the outside of it, it would be a lot further. So we really wanted to swim around the inside of it. And at that point, the small boat, so there's a big boat outside the reef and a small boat inside the reef, which was accompanying the swimmer. And at that point, when like we started to come around the corner and just the waves got bigger and bigger, and the outboard engine came off the back of the support boat that was with the swimmer, we were like, hang on a minute, I think we might have walked into a big fat storm here. Wow. So we stopped there, pulled everyone out of the water, and the following morning got back in and basically swam the entire west side of the island all together. So this journey was going to be a relay as well. So we were 15 this time, or 16. And so we get it, one person would swim and then the next person would swim. And because we then all got in and swam the south side of the island, we swam quite a significant distance. But, it's not a success. It wasn't a success story. Sure. But equally, it was such a huge learning curve for each of us. I think each of us took away something from that attempt to swim around the island of Barbados that we will cherish forever. For me, I certainly took away from it the fact that I got so much more congratulations for trying than I would have done if I'd thought about it and then not tried. And I knew in myself that we tried our hardest. We trained our hardest, and in the window that we gave, it just wasn't possible. And so I can always be totally happy in myself that I've given it 150% and it wasn't right. So those are like, for me, that was the key takeaway, and maybe some takeaway for someone listening today, that actually just trying is the key. And if you try your hardest, then you can always be satisfied with the result.
Good on you. Congratulations.
I think you have, in a way, answered my next question, which is, what is the most important lesson you can give to someone interested in long-distance swimming?
No. There's loads more lessons. No. Okay. I'm not dodging that question. I'm not dodging it. I think the most important, sort of more amusing side, when you're swimming in the sea for a long time, the best thing to have when you get out of the sea is a pear drop. There you go. You heard it here first. So they're pear drops, they're little sweets, and it's basically an ester, which takes the saltiness out of your mouth. It's a good one. It's a good one. Good piece of advice there. Okay. But on a more serious note, the best piece of advice that I can give to someone is to start, and don't be afraid of saying yes. I think that's another important lesson, that you may not think that you're able to do something, but of course you'll never know unless you try. So that would be, for me, another important lesson which I'd like to share with you guys today is just start. Just start. Stop thinking about it. Keep it really simple and just start. Obviously do it safely. Yeah,
I think very well said. You just have to try.
Good advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep going. Go for it. George, you know what? I was pretty lucky as well. My parents gave me quite an extraordinary toolbox, and I'm very grateful for that as well, and has brought me on a lot of great journeys in my life. One of the things that, when I was looking at your history, I think there's some similarities. I grew up on a ranch, and through this, my parents, they had horses, and we used to go on long journeys back into the mountains, for like a week at a time, back into the snow and living on horses and way back in the outback. But this I read about the sport Tetrathlon. Hope I said that right. Hope I didn't
You have done so much research. Where did you find this?
Anyway, it looks so cool, man. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. What is it? And looks like a heck of a good time, and was wondering what it was like to compete in something like that.
You guys, I'm so impressed. I was like thinking about my website and thinking, oh God, there's everything it's not up to date. And I'm just like, whatever. But I found out about Tetrathlon. That is amazing. Hey, if I was wearing a hat, I'd take it off to you right now. So Tetrathlon is a great sport. It's a bit like triathlon, but one more sport. But unlike triathlon, you don't do them consecutively. So you have a pause in between disciplines.
Wow.
Tetrathlon included 4 disciplines instead of the 3 which you have with triathlon. You shoot, then you swim, then you ride a horse, and then you run. A really exciting time in my life. For a period, was ranked #1 in the UK for about 3 years, and it's a fantastic sport, and met lots of amazing people through it. And never really it never went to like Olympic levels or anything like that. It was basically, you could do it up until you were 21. Okay. And then that was Tetrathlon. You either then needed to progress to pentathlon or progress to triathlon. That was kind of your options.
Oh, right.
Can you make up your own tetrathlon? Like, make up your own sport, like, as long as it's 4?
Like 100%, Janet, yeah. I mean, why not? We should try tonight. Or this morning with you guys. I mean, yeah, for sure. Why not?
Like darts and something else. When we were reading about it's like tetrathlons, I'm familiar with duathlon and triathlon, right? So anyway, it's just the prefix, like dua is 2, tri is 3, tetra is 4. But very different disciplines. What's interesting about this is there's a horse riding. So I'm assuming you should do the shooting first.
How does that lay out? What goes first? What goes second? Because
Yeah.
when you do look it up, that's exactly what it is. It's horses, it's shooting, swimming.
No, shooting first.
Oh, so it does lay out like
Yeah.
that. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
let,
so
let the man
you
explain.
shoot- you shoot first. It's with a pistol, and you're shooting from 10 meters, and you're shooting with one hand. So you'd stand with your gun in your right hand normally and shoot like this, okay?
Right.
Lifting up your arm and looking along it, okay?
Wow.
And that would be how you do it. It would be an air pistol, quite weird,
Okay.
quite unique.
Yep.
And then you go from that discipline, and you have, how do you do it? We had 10 shots, I've got to remember now. We had 10 shots, they were all timed. So you had 3 seconds, I think, to take your shot. So there would be an instructor, an adjudicator in the room. And there would be maybe like 10 competitors at the table shooting. And the commands would be watch and shoot. And at this point, the targets are like this to you when the adjudicator says watch and shoot. And at any point, the targets turn 90 degrees for 3 seconds to face you. 1, 2, 3. And they turn back.
Cool.
And in those 3 seconds, you need to get your shot off.
Okay.
And if you don't, then you miss it, obviously.
Missed it. Yeah.
Oh.
So that's shooting. And you have 10 shots, and I guess it helps towards your score, so you've got to hit the bullseye. And then those get changed and counted and taken away. And then the swim, again, the swim was quite unique, actually. All of these swims were quite unique. We had to literally, super simple, swim as far as you can in 4 minutes. As many lengths of the pool as you can in 4 minutes. So you literally dive in, on your marks, get set, go. And, one person per lane, and you swim as far as you can in 4 minutes. And then the riding, you get on a horse, and there would be a set course, often a cross-country course. At the top level of Tetrathlon, it is equivalent to like a 2-star eventing. I don't know whether you guys are familiar with eventing, but it's a pretty ubiquitous event. I think it's global. They have it in the Olympics, probably about 4 foot high.
Yeah.
And they're big and solid, and all the fences are very different and quite technical. Some very narrow ones, some quite wide ones, but where it's called a corner fence. So you've got to jump over a corner, jumping the backs of cars that have been slightly sunk into the ground, big drops, water jumps.
Cool.
So you're kind of riding into water, jumping a fence in the water, and then jumping a boat out or something. That was, pretty exciting, and certainly sorted out a lot of people, because the riding as a discipline is so different to the rest of them and takes a lot of training.
Yeah, I bet.
And then the run, for me, I think it was a 3-kilometer run. So you had to run 3 kilometers as fast as you can.
All right.
I have 2 more questions about this tetrathlon. Is the horse your own horse?
The horse is my own horse.
Okay.
When you get to pentathlon, that is when the horses get provided.
Oh, okay. That's a bit challenging, eh? Because you don't know the horse. Is that how it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can it jump?
Yeah. Can't run. Okay. Last question is this tetrathlon is you're gonna do everything by yourself. Like there's a transition.
Yeah, you do everything by yourself. Everything by yourself. There's a long pause between the disciplines.
Okay.
So it's not like a triathlon transition where you go into transition, take off your wetsuit, put on your cycling kit, and go.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, shooting's done. I'm swimming at 12 o'clock today. I've got 3 hours. Great. See you at the pool, sort of thing. So it's a bit more segregated.
Okay. Now I understand. Thank you. Okay. All right. So going farther away from Tetrathlon, we're going to go to Greenland polar crossing. In 2008, George, at the age of just 19, you embarked on an expedition with Alex Hibbert to break the world record for the longest unsupported journey in the polar region. What were your reasons, and how did you come up with your crossing of the Greenland ice cap?
Well, I hadn't met Alex before. And I was giving a talk in the Royal Geographical Society in London. And Alex comes up to me and he says, I've got this idea. What do you think? And at that point, again, with my toolbox, I said, yes, let's try. And, there was obviously pretty inherent risks, like you might never see your friends and family again. And all of these things were largely unapparent to me as a 19-year-old.
Sure.
And we chose Greenland because it's much cheaper. We wanted to make a bit of a statement that going to Antarctica, going to the South Pole, or indeed the North Pole, is largely pretty pointless. You can still have a full polar experience in Greenland. And, as you know, Greenland's a significant ice cap.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it's the second largest in the world. It's the second largest island in the world. The ice is just as cold, it's just as high, and just as terrifying, really, in many ways, as Antarctica and the Arctic Ocean put together. And so that's why we went there. We were young, and this was our sort of opportunity. And I don't know if you were going to ask me if we had the cash, would we have gone down to Antarctica? Probably. But, it made sense for us within our circumstances at the time in 2008 to go to Greenland and spend 13 days living together in a tent.
All right.
Yeah.
Which is not everyone's idea of heaven.
Yeah, George, so I totally get it on the cost thing. I've been doing a lot of reading lately on polar exploration. We've got Eric Larson coming on the show here shortly in the next few weeks. But anyway,
Nice.
Yeah, it should be pretty cool. So his North Pole expeditions, which just blew my mind, flying into, what's it called, Ellesmere Island?
Yeah.
Was like $42,000 to get there. That's the ticket in, and the ticket out was $100,000. It blew my mind. Janet, I don't know, you might know her story. She traversed Everest. She traversed from China to the summit and back down to Nepal. And so she had to buy 2 permits, and the whole expedition, which meant 2 support teams, one on the north side and one on the south side. So it was pretty pricey expedition for her and her team. But when I heard about
nothing compared to
the North Pole, man.
Yeah, it's ludicrous. A lot of people, not Eric, of course, but a lot of people go there. They spend £30,000 to fly, or even more, probably even £100,000 to fly to the North Pole, have a glass of champagne at the North Pole, and fly out 15 minutes later. And I think that's a pretty inexcusable thing to do.
Sure.
Nowadays. And of course, if you can get there by sustainable means, walking, drifting, or whatever, then I think that's an amazing thing to do, amazing feat, because it is a truly remarkable environment.
Yeah.
And that's really why we decided to go to Greenland. Part of the reason we decided. It was just much easier.
Let's get stuck into it a little bit. Tell us how that crossing was done. I read a little bit about it and sort of understood you laid some depots along the way. And how did you lay everything out? How was it done? Tell us a little bit about that trip.
Yeah, exactly. Traditional polar expedition, in the fact that we would start at point A, go into the middle, or go somewhere and come back to point A, and sort of, how the sort of real pioneers of the polar adventure, polar exploration did it. Shackleton and Scott, they got dropped off on a boat, they went into the middle and then came back out to the boat and then went home. Oh, that was the plan anyway. So we did exactly the same as what they did. We arrived on the southeastern coast of Greenland, very popular spot called Kangerlussuaq. And no, that's a total lie, called Kulusuk. We literally got dropped off at the edge of the ice, and we got dropped off by a helicopter. So we chartered a helicopter for 15 minutes max, which dropped us off the edge of the ice. I mean, at this point, I'd never walked on ice, on an ice cap. I had no idea what it felt like.
Oh my God.
I was scared to get off the helicopter because I thought that there was crevasses beneath us. I had no idea. I'd never also skied like that, never pulled a sledge. So there was lots of firsts on that day, but whatever, we made it. And we then skied 700 miles across the Greenland ice cap to the sort of northwestern corner, laying, as you correctly state, food depots along the way, which served 2 purposes. It enabled us to lighten our sledges quicker, but it also enabled us to, I guess, hop between food depots on the way home.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, quite nerve-wracking on day 45 when you realize just how important your food is. 6-7 days of the food in a black plastic bag, bury it in the snow, mark it with a big pile of snow, a big can, and then take a GPS coordinate of it. and then walk away from it. And that really
Scary.
is your only survival.
You're scared. You're going, I hope we find this.
Yeah,
Wow.
100%. You know,
Wow.
if we don't find this, oh, we dead.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow.
Incredible. Hey, I want to pull up a quick clip so we can talk a little bit more logistics. H, can you pull up clip 2? Okay, there you are. Check it out. You're pretty high latitude, so I'm thinking about Eric Larson while I'm thinking about this here. But what you're doing, you're pretty high latitudes. Tell me a little bit about the prevailing winds when you're crossing Greenland, and how did they affect your expedition?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the prevailing winds in Greenland are largely, I guess they are existent, but it's more about the winds, the katabatic winds, which are driven by gravity. So a lot of the guys who are kiting around Greenland, they aren't kiting on prevailing winds. They're kiting on katabatic winds, which effectively, as I'm sure you know, a cold mass of air wanting to get low, right? Because obviously hot air rises, cold air sinks. So it's a mass of cold air that is sinking. Because obviously the ice cap's a big dome, it basically sinks off the ice cap in all different directions, just splays out, poof, like this.
Wow.
And those katabatic winds are very hard to forecast. They are very hard to see or predict. They're very hard to have any warning really whatsoever. And they're incredibly powerful.
Wow.
And those are really the predominant winds that you're exposed to as you cross Greenland.
Yeah, I learned something there. That's something I didn't really even know anything about. So it sounds like it comes in a bit like a squall, you know. At sea, sometimes it just comes, you can see it on the horizon, but it comes pretty quick and comes pretty fast. But yeah, I didn't know about that. Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, quite similar to a school.
Yeah, there are just so many things that we learn firsthand experience, you know, when we're doing adventure and exploration. And these are the things that are not explained in school.
Yeah.
Right? Like the physics of it, the science of it. It's like, oh, all right, this is it. This is what my teacher was telling me. Wow, that's good. Anyway, George, this whole expedition is an enormous challenge from beginning to end. What situations or conditions and circumstances stand out as the most challenging for you?
There are two things which were incredibly challenging for me. The first thing was the mental side of things, the top 2 inches, which for a 19-year-old who's just left school, spending 113 days in your own head, walking, looking at nothing but white and occasionally a blue sky, more often than not white out, was like nothing I can really indeed even put into words.
You were
what it's like.
Crying for mom back home.
Yeah, it's just next level, yeah.
Wow.
It's totally mental. And it's so powerful. It is so powerful, this thing. For me, that was, without doubt, the hardest bit about the expedition, was to convince myself on day 74 that I had to get out of the tent, get out of my sleeping bag, put on my boots, go outside and pull my sledge for another 12 hours. You know, that is just like, what, in anyone's right mind, what is the point? What are we doing?
Yeah.
So that was the first hardest thing. The second hardest thing is a bit more physical. I never forget this. It's a little story for you. I never forget this day 104. We were, you know, within spitting distance of the finishing line. And we were also very close, I think, at this stage to the world record. We crossed the 1,000-mile barrier, and it was just a pretty remarkable thing to do, really. To walk 1,000 miles in a polar region is a pretty daft thing to do as well. And we were retracing our footsteps back across the Greenland ice cap and hopping between all of our food depots as we went. And we were within 100 yards of this food depot. And normally at this stage, we can sort of see like a faint evidence that we'd been there, like a faint like remnants of the snow cairn that we built. something which really stands out on the horizon, a big pile of snow or like a glinting thing. I was like terrifying. I was terrified looking for this. I was like, oh my God, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And we found all the other depots. So I was like, nah, it's all good. It's going to be there. And Alex had the GPS in his hand, and he just said, stop. We arrived, and there was nothing. There was no evidence that humans had ever been there.
Wow.
And no evidence of our food.
Wow. So
really, at that point, this expedition then became more about survival, more about rationing, more about, falling over the finish line. We probably had another 300 miles to walk. I'm guessing. I can't really remember. I should probably know these facts.
Oh my God.
We still had a long way to walk. And we'd just run out of food. And we were probing. So I spent like 5 minutes probing with a tent pole, just trying to find a hard knock, which would be and I just walked out 5 meters square and just doof, 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 straight in, straight out. And it was unsuccessful.
Oh my God.
And we were staring down the barrel at this point of starvation.
Tell me there's a good end. Did you find it?
He's getting
No.
there.
Oh my
No.
God. Wow.
The food is still there, I think. So we set off. We walked on, almost holding a gun to our own heads of starvation. We had with us in the sledge enough food to make to use 2.5 flapjacks, 9 days worth of food. So those two moments were like the two times that the mental cycle and also the running out of food.
That's impressive, man. You are an absolute savage. Good on you. 19 years old. I'm just wondering, so you step onto ice. You've never really done any long ski sort of journeys before. You've never even been on ice like that. Did you get any blisters? Did you have any injuries that set you back at all?
Yeah. I mean, heaps of blisters. I can't really remember those though. This is now 12 years ago, and 11 years ago.
Fairly injury free. What about frostbite? Did you have any issues there?
Right.
I mean, obviously it's super cold.
Our biggest problem, we hadn't taken into account the skin, which is just exposed to that cold consistently. And I got really bad windburn. So the temperatures weren't ridiculous. They certainly weren't what they were last winter in Canada, but it was like minus 42 air temperature.
Wow.
And we were camping. But, in Greenland, we were probably camping in like minus 10, minus 15,
Okay.
minus 20.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that region. Nothing really too. And actually, because the sun is in the sky, when you put your tent up, your tent becomes a greenhouse and it's warm inside. And so it's manageable. So, I did get a little bit of frost nip on my cheeks, where the wind, it's called windburn really, where the wind had just been hammering away. But, it became leathery after a while. That was really about the most dramatic sort of form of personal injury that we had. And that's probably why it hasn't been made into a best-selling movie yet, because that really was the most dramatic thing. But I had a few broken skis too. So Alex's left ski snapped in half, and we had to like patch it together and crack on.
Wow.
But between the ski and the food was really kind of the most exciting part of the journey.
Yeah, nice way to put it. Exciting part.
The food. I think you could make a movie out of that 5 minutes right there, or whatever the day. That one day sounds scary to me.
Yeah, it's scary, really. What did your camp life look like? How important were rest and sleep? And tell us about what was a typical day look like for you.
A typical day on the ice, as I mentioned before, is incredibly mundane. It was incredibly boring, basically. We lived our lives by the clock, by our watch. We chose not to set ourselves distance goals. So we chose not, on purpose, we chose not to say, okay, tomorrow I want to be here. 2 weeks' time, I want to be there. We chose not to do that on purpose. We chose to live by the clock. And so, we'd get up and have breakfast. Breakfast was a freeze-dried meal with a bit of ghee butter. So ghee is the most calorific thing you can eat. It's 880 calories per 100 grams,
Right.
which is insane amount of calories to pack into, 100 grams, which is effectively the size of my mouse,
Cool.
So we added a bit of that to our meals, and then packed up our tent, rolled it. It was a big tunnel tent. And what a tunnel tent means is that obviously it's a tunnel with closed ends, and it's very good in high winds. What it means is that you can take the poles, untension the poles, and then to untension the poles, the thing lies flat, and then you can just simply roll it over itself, and it just turns into a big sausage. With all the poles are still threaded because they all go across the tunnel like this.
Nice.
Okay, and so when you detension the poles, they just lay flat on the floor, and you just roll them all up.
Oh, wow.
And so we rolled up the tent. We did 8 sessions, roughly, give or take, 8 skiing with a 5-minute break in between them. And that basically was in our day in its entirety. And the only thing that stopped us in unforeseen circumstances. And in the evening, we had hot chocolate. We ate 4 flapjacks, 1 pack of Nobby's nuts, and 1 chocolate bar. And that was our entire day's rations, which equated to 5,581 calories a day.
Wow. Hey, so George, how many polar expeditions have you been on now so far? Have you done more after that? Yeah, because I have read you've been doing some stuff on this dark ice project, but how many polar expeditions now have you done?
Oh gosh, I probably went down to Antarctica the year before, the Greenland one, so that's done there. And then I've been, I guess, up into the Arctic regions probably another 4 or 5 times, living in cold climates. But I've never been onto the Arctic Ocean itself, and I've never been to the North Pole itself. So I'm, largely quite unexperienced up in the high Arctic. But I guess spent quite a long time in the Arctic region, which, above 66 degrees north.
Well, obviously you're pretty versed. You probably know a lot about the Arctic. You just haven't been there. What do you think, in comparison, like a ski crossing to the North Pole, difficulty-wise, what's the comparison compared to your Greenland trip?
Yeah, I'd imagine the hardest bit is the fact that you're on a constantly moving like treadmill of ice, because obviously the Arctic Ocean is an ocean, and the ocean happens to be at 90 degrees north where it's cold. So, the top layer of the sea freezes, but that ice is still exposed to all the currents and the wind, and it all moves and flexes and breaks apart and pulls together. And so I imagine that all of those movements beneath your feet would be the hardest thing to manage, I would imagine.
Right.
Have you guys been up there?
No, I haven't been to that high of latitude, but reading about Eric makes a comment. He's done the North Pole and the South Pole, and he's also done Everest. And he says the North Pole is 10 times harder than Everest. So I'm like, wow.
100%.
10 times harder than Everest. But, they did the summer crossing where they were falling through the ice. I think he even fell through the ice without his dry suit on at one point. So.
Savage. Savage. Yeah. And I hope we'll find a bit of time to speak about what I was planning this year, maybe.
Yeah, we've got that coming up, the Dark Ice Project.
That's the one.
We got some questions about that.
Yeah.
Lowest temperature, I'm guessing, that you've done so far, is it Antarctica or up in the Canadian sort of tundra area?
I was up in Canada, right in the centre, a place called Yellowknife. We were walking the ice road due north to the diamond mines up there as a training trip. Mm-hmm. It was, I've never seen temperatures like it. So stable and so consistently cold and so dark. Yeah. It was truly terrifying. And the skills that we learned on that trip are absolutely vital to our survival, right? Because the sun is such a key thing to all polar expeditions, being able to dry kit. You might not think it's very hot in the Philippines, but even me sitting here in rainy old Wales, I am perspiring. I am giving off a bit of moisture through my skin. But what happens to that moisture is that it travels through my insulation and then out to minus 40, which, it was consistently minus 36 and dips to like minus 43 at one night, minus 42 in there. Air temperature, this is not including wind chill. This is like me holding up a thermometer with my fingers and it says -42, you're like, that is bull crunchingly cold. You know, when you first step off the plane, you can't breathe in without coughing in Yellowknife because it's that cold. And you do genuinely fly into Yellowknife, it's -36 outside, and you're like, you know, your jeans kind of form a new skin because they're like that cold. They just freeze. Wow. Wow. When it's -42 outside and you're perspiring, just sitting down or being, somewhere inside your insulation is the freezing point. And what happens is, for example, when you're sleeping in your bed, in your sleeping bag, it's -40 outside, it's +37 next to my skin. Somewhere, as I said, inside my sleeping bag, inside the insulation is the freezing point. And that is where all of my moisture, all of my perspiration freezes. And so you wake up in the morning and you could like crunch into your sleeping bag and you can feel ice cubes inside your insulation.
Wow.
And the thing about it, when it's sunny outside, you can get rid of that. Easy peasy. You know, it's a nice day. You just pull out your sleeping bag on the back of your sledge and it does this amazing thing, which water can do. It sublimes. It goes from a solid straight into a gas. Amazing sort of feature of water, H2O. Yeah. But when there's no sunshine, it's impossible to dry your kit. It's impossible. And the only way to dry your kit is to wear it, is to bring it closer to your skin so that you force the moisture out. And I mean, it's so difficult living in these environments. And we learned so much to such an extent that we slept inside a plastic bag. We put our hands inside a plastic bag and our feet lived inside a plastic bag. And only when we were around the stove did we take off, because at that point, you know, it's going to be damp inside there, and that dampness is going to freeze immediately. Dangerous. It's like, you know, throw a cup of water into the air and it freezes. You've seen all those of it.
Yeah.
Anyways, I droned on a little bit, but that was the coldest ever.
Yeah, so I saw a little clip. I think it's called Isolation, and I think it was from that trip. And you explained it really well, and I could feel it. Like you really gave it a feeling of fear, like almost as if you were on another planet. You went to a place and brought your whole mind to a whole nother mindset. So it's pretty powerful, I'm sure.
Anyway, George, what are some lessons learned that you could pass on to someone wanting to try a crossing of the Greenland ice cap?
Crossing the Greenland ice cap gives you an incredible insight into what life is like in a polar region. There's a very safe crossing between Kangerlussuaq on the west coast and Kulusuk on the east coast. And I did this crossing in 2014. And it's a phenomenal crossing. I can't remember the figures now, but it's 2 weeks on the ice. It's a great sort of experience for someone who wants to immerse himself in true, you know, polar adventure, to see whether they're cut out for it.
Right.
That are cut out for the bigger stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's very accessible. So, you know, for anyone who's looking or thinking about doing an adventure across Greenland, doing that crossing from Kangerlussuaq to Kulusuk, it is a perfect one to cut your teeth on. It's a beautiful thing. And I think that if you're looking to do it, you should do it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hey,
wow.
While we're here, let's talk about the Dark Ice Project.
Yes.
Give us a brief on what's happening there. It looks to me like that concept started years ago and has took off and then has restarted again, but I'm not sure. Just one, give us a brief history and where's it going?
Nice. So the Dark Ice Project, I don't know whether you might have seen that Alex Hibbert is involved in the Dark Ice Project. And he has been trying to do it now, trying to do this Dark Ice Project for about 6 years. Mm-hmm. And no, probably more than that, nearly 8 years, I think.
It's something started in 2014, I think. Quite some time ago. Yeah.
In 2017, Alex asked me and our teammate James to get involved and to make something happen. Yeah. And we did. We had all of the funding lined up and it all got a bit kiboshed by COVID. And the Dark Ice Project was basically an expedition out onto the Arctic Ocean in the depths of winter to bring back never before seen data, content, imagery, and really to put the Arctic Ocean on the forefront of people's minds when it comes to talking about sustainability, and also bringing light to a particular part of the planet which is vital for our survival. And the fact that we know very little about the Arctic Ocean during winter is incredibly concerning. And so we set out to really reverse that balance.
Okay.
And the expedition, as you may have seen, got cancelled because of COVID. I'm now no longer involved in the Dark Ice project in itself. So now Alex is owns the IP to that. And I will kind of carry on and do something different, probably along similar lines, but not exactly the same. But, you know, I'm so passionate about the Arctic Ocean and bringing back data and improving our knowledge of the Arctic Ocean that it's something that I really want to do. But it won't be called the Dark Ice Project. It'll be called something else that's equally exciting.
Okay.
Do you have other plans for any polar expeditions in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I've got heaps of adventures in the pipeline. You know, some of them are a little shorter and still a little smaller up in the polar regions, but others are a lot bigger and a lot more exciting. You know, 2021 for me is hopefully going to be better than 2020. I don't have any big polar expeditions planned for 2021, but I have lots of expeditions and lots of adventures planned for 2021. And, you know, I'm currently talking to a Royal Navy boat, and hopefully that will allow me and a team to get up to the Arctic. So that may happen at relatively short notice. And you know, I think I'm totally equipped now with partners and, you know, brands who are interested in being aligned with this sort of thing.
So not long after your Greenland crossing, I'm not sure, maybe a few months, it seemed like a few months later, you made it down to South Georgia. How did that adventure come about? What did it entail? How did you get there?
Yeah, I mean, so that was actually before Greenland. I was down in South Georgia. That was Christmas 2007.
Okay. All right.
We were going down to South Georgia. It was with an amazing charity, right? I love the idea of getting kids, and I love the idea of getting anyone outside.
Right on.
And so if I can get like kids outside, I think we're really on to something there.
Definitely.
And so this expedition was about exactly that. It was all about youth development and leadership skills. We were heading down to the island of South Georgia, which is a subantarctic island in the Southern Ocean. And it is without doubt the most beautiful island on the planet I've ever been to. We were going down there to try and find Shackleton's stove. There's a story there.
Really?
We were going down there to try and find a new species of fern, a new colony of penguins, build a new pier in the Falkland Islands. We were like doing a whole heap of things down there, and it was truly phenomenal. And the reason why it's most phenomenal, I'm going to tell you a little story here.
Okay.
The reason why it's most phenomenal is this. We got there, we arrived on South Georgia by boat. You can't get to South Georgia by plane.
All right.
You have to go there by boat. You have to provide your own rescue for yourself before you can get the permit to go there, which in itself means that it's beautiful because there's no one else there. But it's most remarkable because every single bird that lives above the waves and every single seal and, I guess, land-breeding mammal which lives beneath the waves goes to South Georgia to breed. When you arrive there, like, you just crossed weeks of ocean. I was at sea for like 10 days sailing across the Southern Ocean, the most ferocious ocean on the planet, to get there. And you look out across the boat, look across the ocean from the safety and security of your boat, and you're like, dude, if I wasn't on this boat, my life expectancy would be 3 minutes. You know, if I was swimming, I'd be alive for 3 minutes, then I'd be dead.
Right.
Like, this is so vast. Yeah. This place is just so huge, the Southern Ocean, and so powerful that it blows my mind. And then suddenly, out of the clouds comes South Georgia, this archipelago of peace where Mother Nature rules the land. And I turn up as a human being where, you know, in this world, I'm in control, right? We're in control of where our food comes from and our water comes from and where we're sleeping, largely. I go to South Georgia and suddenly I'm part of a food chain. I like step onto a beach and there is a 3.5-ton male elephant seal coming at me because I'm on its breeding ground. Not only that, there is 400 Arctic terns above you, like trying to peck your head because you're getting close to their chicks. I'm like, dude, you're suddenly part of the food chain, right? And they don't care. Those elephant seal, those terns, this fur seal, these penguins who are breeding here, they don't care that you're human. They've never seen a human before. And they're like, get out of my patch or you're dead.
What are you doing here, buddy? So I'm getting it. You sailed there. You're on a sailing. You're on a yacht to get there. Yeah. Far out. How big was that boat?
We were sailing on a boat called Pelagic Australis. We actually had 2 boats to get the expedition there, all of us there. One of them was 74 foot long and one of them was 55 foot long. But not big. These are like one mast and a sail.
Bigger than my boat, but not that big, especially in the Southern Ocean. Not as big as Mike Horn's boat, a Pangea.
Well, I don't know if you know Todd's story. Todd sailed around the world without an engine for almost 18 years and mostly by himself. So if somebody knows about boats, he does.
Nice. You know what?
Yeah, I took off pretty young. I was 26 years old to sail around the world.
You know what? I didn't know that, Todd. That's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is amazing.
Did you ever hear of Len and Larry Pardee?
No.
Anyway, they wrote a bunch of books about sailing without an engine, and I got stuck into reading those when I was really young and reading a lot of sailing books. And I was a climber, but I got involved in sailing pretty young and took off when I was 26 years old, and I yanked the engine out of my boat. I actually had one, and I mounted 16-foot oars on it and took off across the South Pacific quite young. Anyway, I learned a big lesson. I was a bit ignorant. I tortured myself for years.
But so amazing. I still love sailing today. I think it's up there with my favorite things. And I'm inspired by the Vendée Globe and the America's Cup and also just sailing. I just love sailing. It's fantastic.
So I was curious, I saw a video of you the other day on Facebook and you popped out of a hatch cover. Is that your boat?
No, I don't have my own boat now. I wish I did.
I saw a Facebook post. I think it was you. You popped out. You sort of looked. You said something like, I had to do it. It was so inviting. And then you dove off the front deck into the water.
That's it. That's me, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Do you have any plans to go back in South Georgia?
You know what? I'd absolutely love to. I really would. It's the most special place on Earth. But I have no plans to right now.
So how about sailing? After that voyage, have you done any more sailing? Where else have you been?
Yeah, I mean, I've done quite a bit of sailing now. So we obviously sailed the Southern Ocean in 2008. Then in 2015, we sailed the Atlantic from Newport back to the UK.
Yeah.
And then in 2016, we sailed across the Pacific in the Transpac race. It's just fantastic. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, so you've done a lot of high latitude sailing, it sounds like, down at South Georgia and then coming out of Newport back to the UK. That was pretty high latitudes as well, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. We had some pretty big storms actually crossing the Atlantic that way. Going that, you kind of do you go a bit higher, right, into the higher latitudes to ride the northern fringes of the lows and to bring you back into England and kind of then back into the western approaches where you get very strong winds, right? And we had some. We had the storm jib up and no mainsail, basically just sailing on the wires, and pretty exciting, quite sporty stuff.
Well, I'm curious, what was your biggest storm ever in your sailing experience?
The biggest storm, the Atlantic was a big one. We were sailing, pretty much just on like the wires. There was no sail up. We had a storm jib up, and that was pretty much about it. Just to like give the boat some sort of bearing so that we had something to steer on to keep ourselves head to wind or roughly that way. But really, actually, the biggest storm I remember facing was in the Southern Ocean. Truly terrifying. We spent a few days at Hove 2, right? And for those, obviously, Todd, you know exactly what Hove 2 is, but for those non-sailing people out there, say the wind is blowing at me from the screen, right, from the camera, straight at me, into my face. The wind is blowing towards me. And this is my sailing boat. This is the front of my sailing boat and the back. And basically what you do is you fix your rudder to turn you up into the wind, right?
Yep.
And then what happens is, because the wind is so strong and the waves are so big, you basically want to ride all of the waves with the bow of the boat going into the waves. You don't want to be caught side on or even stern on. You want to be caught, you want to meet them face on, right, nose on, and ride the wave out. And so what Hove 2 is basically because there's so much wind, the bow of the boat starts to move off the wind, right? And then you start to sail forwards. Because my rudder is turning up into the wind, I'm basically just constantly doing this. And it's basically the safest way to ride out a storm. And I remember spending 24 hours at Hove 2 in the Southern Ocean. And like, those waves that you see on Instagram, they're real. They are true. You're in a 74-foot, 55-foot boat riding these things out, and these waves are coming over the pilot, over the coach roof, over the boat, and you're like, this is big stuff. No one's, the captain's like, no one's going outside. I'm afraid we're just going to lock ourselves in here for the night. And it was actually a bit like lockdown, global lockdown, being in a global pandemic, being on that boat for 24 hours.
Yeah, man, I was off New Zealand quite a few years ago, and we got caught in a storm it was on the Queen's birthday. They call it the Queen's Bomb. And I think 4 boats were actually lost, and like 5 or 6 boats abandoned. They had to call the Coast Guard. But I was with a Russian guy named Dmitry, and we were sailing out to Fiji. The wind was blowing somewhere around 70 knots for a couple days, and the seas built up to about 45, 50 feet, if you can believe that. And we just sat Hove 2 and just rode it out. But, man, it's hard to explain when you see a sea like that because you've never really seen it before. And you're in awe. You're like, oh, my God, really? This is it? And you're riding up on these things, and when you go down, it's higher than your mast. And, yeah, it's something. There's an awesome sort of beauty about it because it's so powerful, and so it's aspiring, I find.
Yeah, 100%. I never forget as well, on a different trip where across the North Atlantic Ocean from Greenland back to Scotland, and we got basically caught in 60 knots of breeze, and
in a kayak.
In a kayak.
Wow.
And that's more terrifying, to be honest.
Oh,
yeah, we're just about to get to that story. Dude, you're amazing. I can't believe what you pulled off. I don't know how you even thought even trying that one. But anyway, while we're talking about sailing, I had another question for you. We're talking about sailing, bro. Tell us about the gin. Tell us about Bullard's gin. What's its history? And do you carry a flask in your survival kit?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Carrying a flask of Bullard's gin is route one important. It's the key to surviving any storm. In fact, and you wouldn't. In your grab bag on board the boat, you don't need a VHF. You don't need one day of food. You just need a bottle of Bullard's gin.
Man. Yeah, can you imagine if you actually had to pop open the life raft? I always store a flask in my life raft. So if you ever had to pop the life raft open, boom, there you got that last flask of gin. But, yeah.
It's a lifesaver, I reckon.
Totally. Cool, man. So tell us about it. What's its history? It's been in your family for years, and you're an ambassador. Tell us a little bit about the gin. I'd like to, maybe we could sample it together sometime.
That is a great idea. I love it, Todd. Yes. Yeah. So let me take you back a little bit. In 1837, my great-great-great-grandfather founded Bullard's Beer.
Okay.
And Bullard's Beer became, over the next century, a really big brand in the UK, in Norfolk in particular, in East Anglia. And we then sold that in 1963 to a global brand, or what became a global brand, Diageo. Anyway, in 2015, we bought the brand back and started selling gin. And it's going really well. We're still selling gin today, and it's fantastic to have the brand back alive. The gin itself has won heaps of awards, and it's really delicious, and very proud to be part of it in my own way.
Cool. Maybe we can get together for a bit of a party someday and test it out in the wilderness while we're rewilding ourselves.
Yes, please. That'd be awesome.
Hey, so I want to...
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, man. I'll pull up another clip here. We're going to talk about your kayaking adventure a little bit. I want to pull this up so our audience sort of gets an idea a little bit about this trip. It's pretty fascinating what you did here and pretty brave. You took on some big stuff. Let's pull up clip. What is that? Clip 3. Let us give your business a welcome sense of identity. Our thoughtful, well-crafted floating offices can embody your brand, your ethos, and help transform your business. Our floating offices for creative companies are ideal for waterside or marina locations. Our low-impact, sustainable, and energy-efficient designs offer a genuine alternative to the mundane. Let's start building. ecofloatinghome.com.
Hey, honey. I'm getting a little bit of the lockdown blues. Do you want to go out for a hike?
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm all covered up. I'm ready to go. Let's go get geared up at ROX.
Okay, great idea.
Sweet, let's go. Hope you enjoyed George Bullard, Part 1. Stay tuned for Part 2.